I think I've given myself a lot of needless guilt. I think Catholicism shows up in my work a lot. I mean, I think it's everywhere.
So tell us about your upbringing as a Catholic.
Well, I went to Catholic school, so I knew a lot of Bible stories. If there's some things that I'm an expert on, well, there's not many things I'm an expert on, but I'd say that the Catholic culture is something that I have a deep relationship with. And what I realized is that the story, the Christian story, is actually a really interesting story when it comes to duality. There's a lot of characters like Pontius Pilate, for example, who's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just kind of a cog in the system. He's hated in some ways. He's the guy that makes the order for Jesus' death. But without him, the death doesn't happen.
Right.
And the death has to happen for the story to happen, for all the good stuff to happen. And this is put into the story. This is part of the story. Judas is another one.
Have you read the Gospel of Judas?
No, I've always meant to. I think I had a copy.
In that gospel, Jesus tells Judas, "You're my greatest ally in this thing because you're helping me get rid of my body," basically. And which makes total sense, because if you're Jesus, first of all, you're omnipotent. You can see the future, and you're all forgiving. He was on the cross, and he said, "Forgive people. They know not what they do," when they were
right.
literally killing him. It doesn't make any sense that Judas would be the bad guy in it, except for the fact that the Roman Catholic. Why is it called the Roman Catholic now? It's a perpetuation of the Roman state. And at that time in Constantinople, there was like a Jewish uprising. So they wanted to, and Judas means Jew. So they were trying to like paint, that's one of the theories anyway.
I can see that. Well, the Jews are certainly the enemy in the story. If there's any enemy, it's the corrupt Pharisees.
Right.
I don't mean to paint myself as a overly religious person. I'm not. But growing up Catholic, it was great. And I can say as a literary background, it's fantastic. And if you want to use imagery in songs, go with the Bible.
Well, here you go. You got see, you're a Magdalene whore. I'm a child hitting slut.
Exactly. You're a Magdalene whore. I love Mary Magdalene.
So what does that mean? You're a Magdalene whore.
Well, it is interesting, Magdalene whore.
Because Magdalene, I guess, depending on what was she a whore for God?
She's a hero. She's a hero. She's a heroine. She
was the immaculate. She had the immaculate conception, right? I mean,
no. That's the Blessed Mother.
Oh,
Mary Magdalene. She's Jesus' girlfriend,
right,
or wife,
right?
And they tried to. I believe, my own personal belief is that they tried to discredit her and call her a whore. But I don't know if that's the proper translation. I think she might have just been a hippie, or she might have been one of those. She might have been a holy person. She ran off and supposedly started another sect in the south of France after Jesus, after the crucifixion. She ended up in the south of France, kind of was a bit more pagan,
right?
And she was Jesus's right-hand lady. I mean, she was tight. So even more so than guys like Peter and stuff. That was the whole thing with that era of trying to figure out what had been hidden.
So I want to go back to Papa Told Me Once, because this is a dense song. We got
please. I think that's where we started. Yeah,
we did. So things I come to expect: nagging pains inside your neck. Doctors telling me you're dead. The fireplace and fairy tale is burning up in front of me again. That's some deep shit, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of imagery.
So is somebody
inside your neck?
Has somebody actually died? Is this?
Well, yeah. My mother was really sick. My mother was very, very ill. She died from her illness not many years later. It seemed like forever, but in the time, it was a deep, it was a very dark time for me, and it was very creative for me. And some things were looking great, and some things were looking bad.
So you say nagging pains inside your neck was like that was part of your mother's illness, and you expected?
That was one of the things. Yeah, I remember. It was one of those details, and I don't know. A lot of people were ill around that time. It was one of my first touches with mortality. Right. That was in my 20s, and people I really loved and cared for were ill and was sick and dying, and it was one of those times where it was descending on me. I remember. Yeah, I don't know.
So
it was also something to be able to be honest about it, to say it out loud, and say it in front of people. I remember when I sang that song, I think Vic Rice was in the room when I recorded that song. And I said, things I've just come to expect, nagging pains inside your neck. And I remember he laughed because he thought I was saying like a pain in the neck. Like, oh,
that's what I thought too. Yeah, that's what I thought too at first.
It's nice because it's a double entendre. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be taken as immediately sad.
But if you say right after that, doctor's telling me you're dead, you can't just like, for me, I couldn't land on, nagging pains inside my neck.
Yeah.
Doctor's telling me you're dead. That's too stark.
I'm sure as soon as Victor laughed when he heard doctors telling me you're dead, he probably was.
He's probably like, oh, whoops.
I was like, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
So I resolved myself to drink when all the shit came down that day. I really like this one. When all I loved had gone away, when mama's gone and love is too, it's payment for the sins you've yet to do.
What a thesis.
That one's really powerful. And then this reminds me of Buddhism. I'm a bit of a Buddhist. And payment for the sins you've yet to do. That reminds me of because Buddhists think that you can even be paying for karma that you did in a future life.
Oh, I like that. Ooh, I like that.
So mama's gone and love is too. Is that love went with mama, or is it something else happened at the same time?
Everything was happening. It was terrible. I mean, I get my heart broken all the time, but that was a tough time. That was a bad time.
Was it you had a relationship also on the rocks or something?
I think so. I think right around that time was the end of a very important relationship, and so I think that was part of it. There was a lot of details. I mean, of course, when you write at those times, there's a lot going on, and so you write about all of it. I mean, if you want to, I believe in that. I believe that no matter what you do, it should make sense with itself. Like people can sniff out if it's bullshit, and that's where you get trite songs. That's where you get shtick and kitsch, right. And I can write that kind of stuff too, and it's fun. But I try not to. I try to write some real shit, And the thing is that good art, and this is something I've learned much later. Good art speaks to itself. It has a conversation with itself. Mm-hmm. That you don't even have to know what the hell they're talking about. You don't have to know that Salvador Dali, his painting has all this symbolism, has a little, his childhood dresser and the little ants crawling on the bottom and the ship. You don't have to realize that that's all a story to him, but somehow you get it. You see the continuity. You see that it relates to each other. Because it connects in his mind. And so that's the same that, I think that's why people hear my songs and go, hey, that's a good song. I feel like I can relate to it. It's because of course you can. I'm being honest. And honesty goes a long way, I guess. I hope.
The funny thing is because of the musical style of that song, it's so happy, the song.
Is it?
The music, it's like a boom 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 boom. It's it's a happy song. You're in musically.
Which Papa told me, or
yeah,
what?
Papa told me once. It's a
little somber.
You're grooving. I don't see the somber at all. That's why it fucked with me because I didn't think it was somber at all. I thought it was
I do have a lot of different versions of songs.
Well, in that particular version, I heard it was just like going back to the country vibe or the folk vibe, and then like Papa told me once. Like how many country songs probably have that same kind of line in it, you know?
Yeah, I do mix a lot of styles, you know. That's actually one of the cool things that I realized in this thing I had, this Coyote Studios session conversation. It was all about the different styles that the Slackers did. We were never dogmatic. If you want to talk about Buddhism, actually, that's a great example. I've never been a dogmatic Buddhist. My interest in religion, dogma doesn't attract me. I like the essence of things. I like to talk about the essence, you know. But dogma has its place. You know, they say you can pray and you don't mean it, and the prayer still can work. You know, you say you chant and there's some empirical truth in these things. There's some power in them.
This is something I've been made aware of lately because like China is a very memorized, rote culture. They like, so for them, memorizing a sutra, even if you don't know what it means, and just saying the sutra is like really beneficial. Or the rituals, you know, bathing the Buddha. There's a sutra on how to bathe the Buddha, the statue of the Buddha.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I know. But, it's crazy though, and this is the things. I mean, the Catholics have it too. We have dogma. You know, we do our things, right?
You guys got the candles. I think for a lot of Americans, when they first see Buddhism, it's like a nice breath of fresh air from Catholicism.
Yes,
but what we see, or Christianity, but what we see is the practical aspects. We see the meditation. We see sort of the less important emphasis on dogma. But what happens, I think, is that first of all, the literature and like the Bible. I don't know how many books you got, 100, something like that. Buddhism has got like thousands. It's like ridiculous. Like there's just endless amounts of sutras and texts. And so it depends on what you're reading at the time and like kind of which way you're going. I mean, it just depends, where you're at and then what you're paying attention to, I guess. And
I really liked when I was in Japan the first time, I saw little Buddha statues on the street, and particularly on the corners of streets and places where it's dangerous to drive.
Right.
They have little Buddhas, like, you know, to bless an intersection.
Right.
And then people put little bowls of rice and they knit hats for them.
Right.
And it's very loving. And I saw this thing and I thought, wow, you know, because of course for me, all the philosophical Buddhism sounds lovely. It just sounds, you know, oh, I love the philosophy of it. I love this feeling.
That's how I came to it as well.
The dogmatic Buddhism is also very cute. It's like it's pretty and it's caring and it's sweet. It's got a sweetness to it. You know? I could see Wasted Days album being a bit more Buddhist influenced. Songs like The Nurse or Henderson Swamp.
So what's The Nurse all about? What is bad? Don't be glad. What is worse on The Nurse?
That was my freedom song of turning 28 years old, where I was just like, hey, you know, how about you just let's not, well, a bit like on the Ragtime. Let's just not focus on the morose things. You know, baby, how about you just don't bullshit me? Don't give me your words of sweet whiskey, that southern drawl crawling all over me quickly, you know? You see, I've been lied to, I've been laughed at, I've been lied to, you know, I've been trusted, I've been laughed at, I've been fucked over, all sorts of things. But then I'm cynical now, you know? It's like, well, I'll no longer be twisted and tied to. Don't twist me up. Don't lean on me too much. I don't have much to give. So, you know, for what is bad, you know, don't worry. We won't be glad for what's bad. For what is worse, I'm the nurse. I'm here. You know? And music is the nurse. And at the time, like I said, my family was ill and people around me were ill. I was doing a lot of nursing. But I like the idea of the nurse. When my mother was sick, and I was in the hospital with her. I got to be very fond of the nurses because the hospital's it's a dark place, right? Needless to say, people are ill. There's a lot of cloudiness and grayness, and then there's these nurses, and not to say all of them are like this, but more than you'd expect. They're these like little beacons of light. There's these little bright lights walking around, and I would see them because I spent a lot of time in the hospital, and I'd see them walking around, and I would just see the lights, and I was like, oh, you blessed creatures, yeah, you know, really, it's quite a nice impression.
That one I always thought was like, it's funny because every time I misinterpret a song, I have to like cancel one of the lyrics out in order for me to make my misinterpretation.
Yeah.
But I always thought it was like a joke. It was like, what's bad is, you know, I don't know what "Don't Be Glad" means, but it's just like, what's bad is here's what's bad and here's what's worse. The worst part is that I'm the nurse. Like, so you can worry about this bad thing, but you really got to worry about is I'm the nurse, so you're really screwed now.
You could take it like that, because I also just feeling for those nurses, man. And the nurse is the one the nurse is the hopeful one, right? There's hope. The nurse has hope. The nurse has something. There's this giving, right, element. I don't know.
Yeah, I never thought of it the way you. It's another one.
But, and I was also like, I think a lot of times when you're a band going through town, you know, you're the answer for the moment. You're the momentary Band-Aid. You know, you're the one that the boyfriend is gonna say, you asshole, stay away from my girl. You know, and the girl's gonna say, you come over here. I need my boyfriend to be jealous. You know.
Right.
Or it's their night out. You know, a lot of people come see you on people see you on their night out. They're having fun. You see people at their most fun. Well, you hope. Yeah. Sometimes they're most drunk. They're not the most fun. But, you know, you're the person that everybody wants to see. And so it's also that song, you know, Sweet Road Out Yonder. Lord knows I have gone her. At that time, 1999, I'd been on tour for about 4 years at that point. 3 or 4 years. You know, don't teach me no lessons, and just call me when you wanna. You know, it's like I'm not gonna hold you to it. Don't hold me to it. You know, call me if you wanna. See me if you wanna. If you wanna meet me when I'm back in New York, because it's a few girlfriends. Don't feel obliged. I don't. You know, you don't have to feel obliged to me. Just call me if you wanna, and if you want to, I'm there for you. I want it too. You know.
That's the right attitude, man. If you want to,
I don't know if it's the right one, but it's.
If you don't want to scare well, I mean, if you want the ladies to actually call you, that's the way to say it.
You know, it's funny. After a bunch of years of being on the road, we had this tour manager, and he said, you know, it's funny when you first go on the road, you want to get the girls, you know, and then after a bunch of years on the road, you're trying not to. You know,
you're just like, there's trouble. There's like 10,
it was like
20 different types of trouble that you're now familiar with.
I forget how he said it. He said, yeah, when you first go on the road, you're trying to get the girls to notice you, and then a few years later, you're trying to get the girls not to notice you.
Well, I guess you don't want to get set up, like.
It's just all the trouble that comes.
All the drama.
I mean, it just, you know. Not to mention, then a lot of guys get married at home. You know, we don't want to get noticed. We got girlfriends, we got wives, we got whatever. You know, so it's funny. It's how the attitude changes. You know, you went from being a young buck to being, you know, what happens next? Now you're Sweet Road Out Yonder. God, I said, Lord knows I'd gone. I was only 4 years in. That was 20 years ago. Shit. Oh, yeah.